In this analysis video, we're going to take a look at visualizing bounce. So I think a lot of students are confused about what should happen with the finesse wedge and how the club should contact the ground. So I've got a few or a handful of Tour Pro and amateur versions where we're just going to look at how the club interacts with the ground. I'd say the most common approach I see beginners or amateurs come in with is that ball back, hands forward, and they want to make sure that they're hitting down on the golf ball. And what you'll see is in order to use the bounce effectively and give yourself a margin of error, the goal is really to get a long kind of flat brushing spot on the ground. So as you can watch, this is Graeme McDowell hitting just kind of a standard little chip shot. You'll see that the club contacts the ground at least an inch or so behind the ball, and then as it goes through, you'll see there's very little change in loft, there's very little change in face rotation, and there's very little change in the height of the golf club to the ground. It's just sliding along the ground. And now we've got a close-up of Justin Rose. So not quite as clear on the club face, but again, you'll see contact with the ground just behind the golf ball, and then you'll see how long the club slides along the ground. This is Justin Rose over the last 15 years or so has been statistically one of the better guys with wedges and finesse wedges. So this is a good example. That ball checked up on him a little bit, so you can see that he caught it a little bit cleaner, as far as didn't hit quite as far behind as say Graeme McDowell in that first example. But again, you'll see this long flat spot. That's essentially our goal for any of the finesse wedge swings, to get the club to just slide along the ground, which is proper usage of the bounce. All right, here we have Tiger Woods at the British Open, hitting a little more of a pitch shot, but again, we're going to see this common trait. So even if there's a little, the camera angle is not perfectly square to his stance, but even if you have shaft lean, as long as you get the club to slide along the ground, and this is, I think, one of the best illustrations, typically on the firmer ground, you'll be able to hit a little bit behind it as long as you're using the bounce properly, and you'll be able to really slide the club along the ground, as Tiger is demonstrating here. So one way to monitor and track your progress when you're practicing your wedge play is to work on how long of a brush spot can you get with your chipping and pitching. All right, so now we got Patrick Reed. I wish that this was a little bit zoomed out, but because we can't quite exactly see where the club, the height of the club, but you can see that it's on the ground here, close to on the ground, well behind the ball, and then he even takes a little leading edge divot just past the ball. That can happen while still using the bounce. They're not mutually exclusive, but again, you'll be able to see that he's able to get the club to slide along the ground. I usually challenge my students to give me at least 4 to 6 inches of club sliding along the ground. I think it's a good kind of rough ballpark that'll give you a big enough margin of error that even your bad shots will end up all right, which is really the goal of this, is to build a technique that allows you to not have to be perfect. Most golfers who struggle with this have the club too high coming into the golf ball and then tend to pull up quickly. That can either happen from getting too much lag or getting a little steep with the shoulders, or then it will come up from using too much wrist and not enough body on the way through. So if you get the good pattern of casting in transition and then coasting through impact, you too can get this good long brush location. Okay, so now we got an amateur. Over here on the right, we're going to see one of his earlier shots, and you'll see the club contacts the ground. It was coming in on a nice shallow angle, but it contacted the ground and then skipped up into the ball. So that wasn't on the ground for a very long period of time. Now, the golfer complained both of blading the shot and hitting behind it. Over here on the left, you'll see the club still contacts the ground well before the golf ball, maybe a little bit closer to the golf ball, but not dramatically. But then what you'll see is he's able to keep it lower to the ground from the little setup and concept change. So this ended up being an okay shot. Now the two questions I always get are, what about out of the rough, and what about if I'm hitting like a low running shot? Should I still contact it behind the golf ball? So first we've got Tiger demonstrating more of a low running shot, and you'll see that he's got a fair amount of shaft lean, and that club is coming in from a higher position, but you will still see that gets close to striking the ground, if not striking the ground just before the ball, but it's definitely much closer to where the ball was hit or where the ball's lying, and it's done with a fair amount more shaft lean. Now even though he has shaft lean, because he has this long flatter bottom of the swing, not quite as long and flat as when he did the pitch shot from the British Open, but you'll still see the club stay low to the ground for a long period of time. It's not coming up very quickly. So he's essentially shifted that flat spot a little bit more forward, but not so much that he's hitting kind of the middle of the ball down on a very steep angle, which I think is the image that a lot of amateurs have in their mind. You'll see that he does something similar with the shot out of the rough, which is the club is definitely coming more down in towards the golf ball, but just watch how low the club head stays through this zone through here. Again, our goal is to get at least a 4 to 6 inch kind of window where the club is about the same height, just kind of sliding along the ground, and you do that by having a proper blend of pivot and not a whole lot of wrist flip on the way through. Now for fun, I thought we'd look at a member of the website who was complaining about struggling a little bit with his chipping, and I had him do a little shadow drill of hitting right arm only, left arm only, trying to keep the opposite hand in the same bubble. And he said that his right hand feels more comfortable but is more inconsistent. Well, I want you to see if you can identify why. So if we're looking at the way that the club contacts the ground, okay, we can see it's contacting the ground before the ball, and it's coming up a little quickly. So I wouldn't say that that's a really large flat spot. Now let's compare that to the left hand. So if we look at the left hand, you can see how much lower and flatter that is on the way through. So I said if we were going to match one of the hands, I would probably want to match the way the club is swinging more from the left hand. Even though the right hand feels more comfortable, I think that the overall low point control pattern, you can see a little different pattern of how the club is sliding along the ground. If you use the way the bounce works and how the club is sliding along the ground as kind of the ultimate barometer of whether or not you're making progress with your finesse wedge technique, it'll help make some of the decisions of what you need to work on a little bit clearer. Do I need to get the club lower to the ground, or do I need to get the club sliding longer on the way through? By working on those two skills, you should develop a pretty predictable level of consistency with your finesse wedge game. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to understand more about the wedge play, then head over to Golf Smart Academy and check out all the videos in the finesse wedge section. If you're not quite ready to sign up for a free membership, then please like this video and subscribe to our page. That way you'll be the first to know about it whenever we create new YouTube content just like this.